Do you know someone who is or who has served in the military? A friend, sibling, parent, or grandparent? Did you know that 20 veterans commit suicide every day? This is extremely concerning and is higher than the civilian suicide rate. So why is the suicide rate so high? There is no statistical evidence between combat and suicide. 10% of U.S. military is actively in combat, yet more than half of the military has filed for disability. In a quote from Sebastian Junger, he states, "After 9/11, the murder rate in New York City went down by 40%. The suicide rate went down. The violent crime rate in New York went down after 9/11. Even combat veterans of previous wars who suffered from PTSD said that their symptoms went down after 9/11 happened. The reason is that if you traumatize an entire society, we don't fall apart and turn on one another. We come together, we unify. Basically, we tribalize. And that process of unifying feels so good and is so good for us that it even helps people who are struggling with mental health issues." Here is a clip of Sebastian Junger from TED Talk Live.
Now, American soldiers, American veterans are coming back to a country that is so bitterly divided that the two political parties are literally accusing each other of treason, of being an enemy of the state, of trying to undermine the security and the welfare of their own country. The gap between rich and poor is the biggest it's ever been. It's just getting worse. Race relations are terrible. There are demonstrations and even riots in the streets because of racial injustice. And veterans know that any tribe that treated itself that way, in fact, any platoon that treated itself that way, would never survive. We've gotten used to it. Veterans have gone away and are coming back and seeing their own country with fresh eyes, and they see what's going on. This is the country they fought for. No wonder they're depressed. No wonder they're scared.
The military is a close-knit community where everyone is going through much of the same things. They become your family. However, as you transition to the civilian life, you start to lose that feeling and instead start to feel isolated. It is this isolated feeling that contributes to suicide. In a quote from Vanity Fair, "We are not good to each other. Our tribalism is about an extremely narrow group of people. Our children, our spouse, maybe our parents. Our society is alienating, technical, cold, and mystifying. Our fundamental desire as human beings is to be close to others, and our society does not allow for that." So what is being done? Before someone can join the military, they are screened for mental illness. Those that already have a mental illness are at higher risk of suffering from PTSD, just like those that have family members with a mental illness are at higher risk of battling mental illness themselves. There are also military briefings that are held before, during, and after deployments to help soldiers recognize the signs of mental illness and to promote those that need it to seek help. The government has also increased the budget over the years to help the VA help veterans with mental illness. There are programs offered that are geared towards the individual and their needs. For example, readjustment counseling services, military sexual trauma services, services for veterans who are homeless, and many others. There is also a suicide hotline now available to veterans. There is a military program called ACAP that all soldiers are required to participate in before they leave active duty. This program was designed to help service men and women transition from the military to civilian life. It lasts 1 week and helps a soldier write a resume, look for jobs, prepare for interviews, tries to connect them with the VA, and a class on their individual home state benefits for veterans. Another program, called the Individual Ready Reserve, also known as the IRR, is required for soldiers that have had less than 8 years as an active duty soldier and who are not going to join the active reserve or National Guard. This program requires the individual to only attend a once-a-year screening. These individuals are called upon in a time of need during war before a draft is instated. So why is this not enough? Why is the suicide rate still so high? What can be done better? According to the Huffington Post, fewer than half of all the nation's 22.3 million veterans are enrolled with the VA. A major problem for many veterans is that the nearest VA is more than 70 miles away. Who wants to travel over 70 miles to get help? Almost no one. There needs to be more VAs on hand to these veterans that are suffering. It would be beneficial to have more VA facilities so these veterans are able to seek the care they need in a timely manner. There is also not enough therapists trained in both military culture and suicide prevention to meet the current demand. And due to the shortage of mental health professionals, there are long lines and long waits for appointments. The military could do a better job of connecting soldiers with the nearest VA if they are going through the process of leaving the military. It could be a requirement during the transition process. There needs to be communication between the military branches and the VA so information can be sent to the veteran after they have transitioned out of the military. How about creating a program that can connect veterans that are getting out of the military so they don't feel so isolated? The ACAP program mentioned earlier that lasts 1 week and helps set the soldier up career-wise when leaving the military is great. However, the job portion is only part of the problem for these soldiers. They need to feel connected. 1 week is a short time to learn about resumes, job interviews, the VA, and benefits from their individual state that can help them. If these soldiers could have more time to possibly go and visit their specific VA and talk with retired soldiers that are currently using the VA, they may be more inclined to access this resource that is available to them. Anyone that joins the military is required to serve a total of 8 years. Those that decide to get out of active duty before 8 years need to join the Active Reserve, National Guard, or the IRR. Those in the Active Reserve and National Guard have a lot of access to military programs and benefits. However, those that join the IRR are only required to show up once a year for military screening for a single day. These veterans are just left to fend for themselves and hopefully seek out the VA. If those in the IRR were required as part of their contract to attend their VA facility, even if it was once a year, I think this could help tremendously. If instead of 1 day of screenings, there could be 2 days at the VA and 1 day of screenings, it could help those veterans that are suffering get access to resources that could save them. Every life is important, and our veterans are silently suffering. More needs to be done. Having more VA facilities so that veterans aren't traveling over 70 miles is much needed. Expanding on current programs like ACAP and IRR would be beneficial. But how can we as a society help these veterans? How can you help these veterans? We as a society need to be more accepting and open. When you see someone in uniform, tell them thank you, that you appreciate them and their service. Have a conversation with them. However, many times these veterans are unrecognizable to us. They look like you and me. That means we as a society should open up to each other and communicate with one another. You never know how what you say or do can truly impact the life of another. These men and women have given their time to our country. We, as a country, need to help them succeed after their time of service.